patch notes came out today for the 4.0 patch. The patch, it says releasing May 30th. So, first of all, these times are in Japan. What it means with May 30th is that that's I think 9 a.m. in Japan, which comes out to evening sometime, depending on your time zone, in the United States. The release that it's talking about there, because this has already happened, is actually referring to it being downloaded to the console. And so what that really, the only thing that impacts, is when you can get the downloads so that it'll be ready as soon as you boot the game up when it's actually launched, and when the data miners get control of that information, when they're able to go in and read it and see what's going on. If there's anything interesting that they need to investigate further, then the patch notes will tell us about. So I haven't checked Twitter recently because I've been looking to try and get my first impressions here. So I haven't seen anything that data miners have been talking about, but I'll definitely be looking at that and potentially retweeting anything that I think is interesting to us. Okay, so season in catalog changes. There's going to be a new season. Emotes, titles, gear, the works, everything that there usually is. We've known about these two new stages, Barnacle and Dime, and Humpback Pump Track. 2 new main weapons, 9 sets of main weapons paired to 9 new kits. New Salmon Run stage, and the new Tableturf cards. Okay, nothing new there. 3 new songs. I heard there was a new song that was released and that I haven't gotten a chance to go and look at that, so that's exciting. New main weapons, S-Blast. Okay, so this is just giving us information about these. New weapons, and we already know all of these kits. Okay, so here are the changes. They're changing the carbon roller. When they hold ZR to ink while moving forward, they will now reach top speed a little bit faster than before. Okay. This is a very small buff, but it's definitely not a bad thing. And with, Volti already seeing success on Carbon Deco, I don't think that's a bad thing or anything for it. That's good. Octobrush, reduced amount of ink consumed. Okay, so it's an ink consumption buff, and then reduce the amount of ink consumed while holding ZR. Okay, yeah, just general ink consumption buff for the Octobrush. So that's a good thing. Octobrush was kind of like a very niche weapon, occasionally usable. There are definitely some people who are running it, but can't hurt to give it some buffs, and maybe we'll see a little more use that way. Snipe Rider, they have needed to buff drastically. Ink consumption buff, movement speed while charging and while fully charged is definitely good for it. I'm still not confident that this is going to be a big difference maker for it. The splashes, shortened forward ink spread from the point of impact. Shortened forward ink spread from the point of impact. So this is a painting nerf. It's not going to paint as far past where it hits the ground. Okay. So it's going to be able to paint less and therefore farm specials less. That's a pretty significant nerf. That's something that's really good about the weapon that they're hitting here. Adjustments to alleviate the situation where they're able to effectively exchange fire with foes at a greater distance than intended. Oh, okay. So this is a combat nerf. What was the wording from before? Shortened forward ink spread from the point of impact. So I guess there was some way that people were managing, there was some way that it was getting further range than they meant for it to have. Sloshing Machine lengthened the interval between continuous swings, so they nerfed its fire rate by 5 frames. That's a pretty significant one. I know it's more than 30, less than 40 was what it was before, and now they've increased that. Sloshing Machine was designed for fighting in places with height differences or lots of obstacles, but it's proven highly effective even in battles in flat places, so by lengthening the interval between continuous swings, we've maintained the characteristic wide attack range while decreasing its ability to defeat opponents. Okay, so they didn't want it to be able to just fight across open ground as well as it can. And so the fire rate nerf is meant to counter that. So nerfing some top tiers, and this is probably a nerf as well. Narrowed the width of ink. So a painting nerf and increased the amount of ink consumed 30%? Holy crap. That's one of the biggest ink consumption nerfs I've ever seen. And wow. So it doesn't paint that much from horizontal slashes, and it also chugs so much ink. My god, this is going to be ink hungry. Stamper, we've increased the accuracy of the aim for follow-up attacks with horizontal slashes and lowered the ability to continue fighting solo, all while maintaining the unique nature of fighting by relying on the powerful charge slash. They didn't say anything about the ink consumption nerf there, but... Okay, well, these have been the kind of top 3 weapons for the large majority of the game, and they have all seen significant nerfs, but I'm not seeing any changes to the ballpoint. The ballpoint is arguably the strongest weapon in the game right now, and it's not seeing any attention at all. So this is probably only going to contribute to ballpoint meta. See if they do any... If they change inkjet at all, that could impact it. If they change fizzy bombs, that could impact it. Let's see what they do. Big Bubbler increased its maximum radius. Okay, so it's going to be bigger now. I don't know if that helps it. Like, that makes it so that it's easier for someone to walk into it because the wall of the shield is closer to them, and they're more likely to be able to keep their range that way. I guess it kind of controls a little more space. It already controlled everything around the tower. It also makes it a bigger target. I don't know if... that seems like a side grade, if anything. Reduced the damage taken from some special weapons to 50 to 75% of what it was before. Are we going to get which special weapons? That would be very interesting to know. Okay, Tacticooler extended the drink's effect duration by 2 seconds. Special power-up isn't going to change. Made it easier to activate the effect from the special power-up gear ability. The player only has a few items with that gear ability equipped. Okay. So I think this is the big part of that. And then there's some stuff with special power-up gear, which people have generally not been using on it. Be interesting to see if they consider that now, but... extend the effect's duration. So that's really good for the Tacticooler. Super Chump has needed significant buffs. Let's see if they do it. Increase the radius of ground inked, so 40% is pretty big. So it's going to paint a lot more. Increased minimum damage from 25 to 35. So it's slightly more likely to kill you. Made it possible to aim for nearer positions than before. Okay, that's helpful. Like, I don't know that you always want to be aiming it too close to you, but yeah, that's not bad. These are relatively small changes in the grand scheme of things. Like, it's going to help it, but it's not especially going to be, like, splatting anybody anytime soon. The paint is definitely going to be helpful. It's probably still not the premier painting special, though, especially since they can get killed so quickly. Yeah, I don't know that that's going to change its position in the metagame too much, but the buffs are definitely helpful for it. And they do add up over time. Like, if this doesn't end up, drastically improving the Super Chumps, they'll probably go a little further on the next update. Ultra Stamp shortened the effect duration. So they actually nerfed that aspect of it. Made it easier to activate the effect from special power-up gear. That's the same change that they made up to Tacticooler. But interesting. So they're actually nerfing Ultra Stamp. Points for special nerf to Neo Splash. Rapid Deco? Why? It didn't need that. Okay, points of special nerf to Ballpoint. That is a good idea. This is a very strong weapon right now. It would be really good to take that down a peg. This is a pretty light nerf. I still think this is going to be the best weapon in the game after this patch, considering what they did to the main weapons of all of these 3 options, which are some of the most common weapons in the game right now. Tetras are untouched. Wiper gets a stamp nerf, which might... I don't know that that's going to make a huge difference, but that might make people consider the Wiper deco maybe a little bit more. 2 players on the winning team who made great efforts will celebrate each other's brave fighting after performing their victory emotes. So this is that little fist bump. 2 players on the winning team who made great efforts. So maybe this is going to be based on like gold medals or something like that. But yeah, it'll be like a little recognition for the players who did especially well, I guess. So that's interesting. 2 different ink color combinations from Color Lock. Cool. Okay. So you got a little bit more options with Color Lock. Challenges. You can participate solo or group up. Challenges broken up into as many as 3 time slots so players from various regions can join. Okay. So probably NA, EU, JP, you'd think? JP, AUZ? Is it AUNZ? I don't know. That other ocean. The ocean that's like over that way. I pointed west. You'll just have to trust me on that. As players battle, challenge power will be calculated. So it's going to get a power just like you have in Anarchy Open now. Calculated individually for players who are solo and as a group for players who are in a group. That's cool. If group's members change, the group will be considered new and the power will be recalculated. Okay, makes sense. Just like League powers from Splatoon 2. It's a certain amount of time has passed since the end of the challenge. We'll be able to check lobby terminals, see how high the power was overall. Distribution is 3 divisions, solo, duos, and teams. 3-player groups are considered part of the teams division. Okay. So that answers that question. You can use the shell-out machine with shell-out tokens. Win 5 battles within a challenge, get a token. Oh, so you get more gacha rolls from playing the challenges. You're just going to only earn 1 of them per challenge, though. Okay, so you have to win 5 in a challenge, but that's it. After that, you've done it. You've gotten your dailies. I've probably just accidentally made a whole bunch of people decide to go play Genshin. I'm sorry, guys. That was not my intention. Changes to Anarchy battles. Power calculated again, same as we saw before, based on wins and losses. Reset when map modes switch. If groups members change, group will be considered new, just like in challenges. Once a certain amount of time has passed, they'll be able to check their power. 3 power teams or groups. And it's only measured in duos and teams. So there's no solo Anarchy Open power. Which, I mean, that's what Series and X rank is for, if you're trying to play solo and get a power or something. So makes sense that they'd leave that out. Greatly changed the matchmaking mechanism in Anarchy Open to improve efficiency for groups of 2 players. Okay. So I guess maybe people who are playing in groups of 2 were having trouble finding games? I didn't really have that experience. We'll see if this has an impact on what kinds of teams get made and stuff like that. These are now Salmon Run changes. I'm not super concerned with those myself, but I'll quickly run through. Looks like they've given an ink consumption buff to Dynamo. Very similar ink consumption buff to the Octobrush that it got in PvP. Damage buff to the roll on the Big Swig roller. Increased damage when fully charged and reduced ink consumed. So again, also similar to the PvP buff, but they also increase damage. Slosher damage buff. Lots of buffs. Increase the damage. Increased max damage. Increased damage dealt by Umbrella. So damage buffs across the board for all of the aspects of the Tentombrella. Increased damage buff for Undercover. Increased damage for Tri-Stringer. Increased damage for the reflux. Doubled number of fish scales normally obtained. Okay, so they were increasing the rewards. Made it possible to join extra work solo. A weapon that does not overlap with the other players will automatically be selected. Okay. Group fewer than 4 other players will be gathered so that it becomes a 4-player attempt. Okay, makes it when a player joins an extra work group, weapon does not overlap with players who are already participating is initially selected. Clear when it is not possible to select ready because the player has joined an extra work group and selected a weapon that overlaps another player. Okay. Players in the same pool will be notified when you set a high score. Okay, that's nice. Total number of golden eggs deposited and total number of normal power eggs obtained both display viewing recent jobs. Okay, so they increased the amount of information that you can see about each job that you worked. Newly added items available for trade using fish scales are clearly marked. Okay, so they're putting like the little exclamation mark by it now so that you don't miss something that you could buy. Tableturf. Cards in the deck, card not on the deck. Made so players' win streak displays in online matches. Possible for a player who created the room to leave even other players are in an online match. Cool. So if you make a lobby for it but then have to go, other people don't just get kicked out because you have to go. When a player is spectating and a different player in the room begins playing, that information displays. Made it so that when a player is editing their deck, a speech bubble indicates that they're doing that. So lots of quality of life stuff for Tableturf, it looks like. Players will automatically give up if they do not take any actions for a certain amount of time in online matches. Yeah, so that they can't just stall it out. Okay, the 3 songs that were added will now play in the lobby. I'm assuming that's what that is. Maybe there are 3 new lobby songs in addition to 3 new battle songs. A room creation feature of Splatnet 3. It's creating private battle rooms in advance. Can generate an invitation URL and share it via social media to invite other players. That's interesting. I don't know how... I'm just wondering if that might have utility for tournament use. Whether that's going to make it any easier for matches to be created. I don't know. You might... If you have to go through the app, that might be slower for most people. That's worth experimenting with a little bit. Some other features during matchmaking: displaying notifications, displaying your friends menu, displaying ghost details. Is that like the phantom like hologram person that shows up in your lobby? You can view lockers, cool. And then bug fixes, just looking to see if there's anything interesting here. Area for splat umbrellas and undercover umbrellas blocking enemy shots was smaller than it appeared. One of the major issues, but could appear slightly in front of the umbrella on other players' screens and be attacked. This usually been mitigated by... Ooh. That's a tent umbrella fix. I don't know if it's the tent umbrella fix that's needed, but that... Everyone should get on tent umbrella and see if this is the real deal right here. This is something that might actually make that weapon something you consider now. Okay. So that is potentially a big deal for the Brella classes. Like, they've definitely gotten some kinds of shield buffs on all 3 of those classes. It's just a question of whether that's the main thing that was causing people problems or whether it was just latency or what. But I feel like the Brella players should at least get in there, play a couple games, and see if anything feels different. Okay, let's see if any of these fixes to multiplayer are important here. Okay, there's a change to the placement of the goal in Clan Blitz Umami. I don't know how significant that's going to be. There's apparently some issue that it's intended to fix, but who knows where they moved it and what tactical implications that might have. Okay, so massive implications for the metagame here, because some of the biggest, most dangerous weapons in the game have been nerfed substantially. Slight range nerf, effectively, to the Splash. Sloshing Machine getting a really big fire rate nerf. Stamper is getting its ink consumption gutted, and now you have to aim a lot more accurately with the horizontal slashes. Some slight buffs to Tacticooler and Super Chump. You know, those are 2 seconds duration, a lot of ground inked, a lot of extra damage, and you can aim it differently now. Slight nerf to Ultra Stamp, and Big Bubbler, it's hard to say whether that's going to be a buff or not. It's at least getting a damage reduction for certain special weapons, so that could be really good for it. And then nerfs to points for special for Neo Splash, Ballpoint, and Rapid Deco for some reason. I feel like this weapon definitely didn't need this. It's a blaster, and it was already 200, but yeah. At least Ballpoint's brought up to its level, or where it was previously. Ballpoint is still going to be really strong. Question is, do we need to go and find alternatives now to these weapons in more situations? They didn't touch Tetras. They didn't touch Wiper Deco. They did kind of touch the current Wiper in the Ultra Stamp nerf. Carbon Deco only got a buff. Octobrush got a buff. So maybe some rollers and brushes are going to have a little bit more to work with, especially now that they're less likely to get shut down by what's previously been meta. Snipe Rider, I mean, it needs significant buffs. I still don't know if this is going to make it considered at all, especially with the kit that it's got right now, but hey, it's something. They're going in the right direction. And Brellas need to go and check to see if the bug fixes actually fixed their weapon, if they can use it a lot more confidently now. Because that was a really significant problem with the weapon. Maybe now it's going to be starting to see just a little bit more use. I'm thinking especially the Sorella tent is of interest, because ink mines are very useful on the tent. Trizuka is a much better special than Inkvac generally. And now they can, just pop Zuka randomly from behind the tent shield, and you won't even see it coming. You'd have to hear it. So that could be threatening, especially if the tent is starting to work now. That's something where tent players, I'm going to be looking to Shadowwind and being like, hey, what do you think? Because that's potentially a huge deal. Otherwise, we've already talked about a lot of the kits. I still have a few more of those videos to make on what I'm thinking those kits are going to be like before launch. But biggest point of interest right now is probably going to be the Wiper Deco. Because we now have an aggressive missiles weapon, and we have to see how that's going to play out. We now have a Squid Beacon weapon that is going to be generally fairly viable. And so if teams want to do beacon strats, then that's an option that they now have. The new Big Swig Inkstorm farming is going to be important. Then we've got that. My hunch is that this is still not going to be that much better than like a Reflux, but who knows, with the object damage buffs and the increased, minimum damage on the Big Swig, it might be starting to edge that out for a niche like Special Spammer. So that's an idea. S-Blast as a main weapon looks insane. The kit will probably hold it back considerably, but it's definitely something to look at. H3D, I mean, if, Big Bubbler comes into play, then that could be interesting. Rapid Pro Deco is potentially interesting. The Tetris players are probably going to see at least some use out of light Tetras. So these are a lot of things that could come in and mix things up. If the Paintbrush ends up being like some insane main weapon that everyone has to consider, that could also mix things up. There's a lot that's going to be changing in the game. They've hit the top tiers where it hurts. They've added some new maps. This is going to be a really interesting patch, and I'm excited to go into it and start messing around with it and see what they've done with it. Let me know what you think in the comments below. There's a lot of media that I'm now going to be consuming now that I've actually seen the patch notes, and maybe there will be some new updates. I'll make sure to retweet anything that I find to be interesting on the Squid School Twitter. So let me know if there's anything that I missed here, any, commentary that you think will be interesting, anything that, data miners might have said. And we'll see if we can share that all out so we know what's going to be happening when the download hits and actually goes live.